You ever arrive somewhere you weren't supposed to be and realize too late that you were never meant to come at all? That was the first thought that crossed my mind the night everything unraveled. The parking lot was half empty when I pulled in. Not unusual on its own, but paired with the silence, the darkness, the stillness, it felt deliberate. Like something had already happened and I was arriving after the fact. I should have turned around right then. But I didn't. My name is Miriam. I was 32 that November. And that night, I had driven 40 minutes in the dark carrying gifts for a Thanksgiving gathering I had been explicitly told not to attend. The message came that morning. My mother's name lit up my phone. Gathering canceled, money is tight, don't make the trip. Short, efficient, final, I replied with a single word, understood, and then I spent 2 hours wrapping gifts anyway. That should tell you everything about who I was back then. Wine bottles carefully cushioned in tissue paper. Handmade preserves tied with twine. A card I rewrote 3 times before settling on something that sounded warm but not too eager. By the time I got in the car, everything looked perfect. By the time I arrived, I understood none of it mattered, because the house wasn't dark. It was glowing, every window lit. Shadows moving behind curtains. The unmistakable flicker of celebration, of people gathered, laughing, raising glasses. Without me, that's when something inside me went very, very still. I got out of the car anyway, walked up the porch steps slowly. Quietly. The way you do when you're not sure if you're about to walk into a mistake or confirm one. The front door wasn't closed. It was cracked open just enough for sound to slip through. And that's when I heard them. My mother's voice first, warm, performative, the version of her reserved for company. Then my sister Dana's laugh, sharp, satisfied. And then the sentence that landed like a verdict. Honestly, it's so much easier without Miriam here. A pause. Then my mother, almost fondly, "Isn't it?" I didn't move. My hand was already on the door, but suddenly it felt like it didn't belong to me. That's the thing about certain moments. They don't feel loud or dramatic. They feel precise. Final, like something clicking into place. And just as I was about to push the door open, a hand gripped my elbow from behind. Firm, controlled. I turned sharply. Theo, my husband. He didn't look surprised to see me there. He looked resolved. He gently pulled me back into the shadows of the porch, his voice low, steady, the tone he only uses when something is actually serious. "Not yet," he said. I frowned, still trying to process what I'd just heard. "What? Come with me," he murmured. "There's something you need to see first." If you've ever had a moment where everything suddenly starts making sense, stay with this story. Because what came next changed everything. We sat in his car at the end of the block for 40 minutes. 40 minutes that quietly dismantled the last 18 months of my life. Theo is a healthcare compliance attorney. He doesn't jump to conclusions. He builds cases. And apparently, he'd been building one without telling me. It started small, he said, numbers that didn't line up. I had spent 5 years building 2 regional wellness clinics, my entire professional identity wrapped into them. About a year and a half earlier, I handed day-to-day operations to my parents. It felt like trust at the time, like family, like relief, but the revenue had been declining, not drastically, just enough to be concerning. The strange part, patient numbers hadn't dropped, which meant the money wasn't disappearing, it was being redirected. Theo had started cross-checking reports. Quietly, methodically, vendor payments, maintenance contracts, supply invoices. At first glance, everything looked normal. But patterns started to emerge. Companies with no real addresses. Invoices tied to equipment we didn't own. Recurring payments that led nowhere. Every single one of them authorized by my father. Individually, the amounts were small. Easy to overlook. Together, they formed something far more deliberate. I didn't need him to say it out loud. I already knew. I leaned back in the seat, staring through the windshield at nothing. "Dana," I said. Theo didn't respond. He didn't need to. My sister had been drowning in debt for years. Not quietly, not discreetly, but loudly, recklessly, always assuming someone would save her. And someone always did. Until now, apparently, that someone was me, without my knowledge, without my consent. My parents hadn't just helped her. They had decided to use my business to do it. I felt something then, but it wasn't anger. Not yet. It was clarity. The kind that settles in slowly and refuses to leave. Theo kept his hand lightly on my arm. "If you confront them tonight," he said carefully, "you lose control of this." I closed my eyes. He was right. "They'll turn it," he continued. "Make it emotional, make you the problem. We need documentation. Time, precision." I exhaled slowly. "Okay," I said, and just like that, the version of me who wrapped gifts anyway began to disappear. The next morning, we started pulling everything. Every record, every transaction, every approval log from the past 22 months. It took all day. By evening, there was no ambiguity left. My father had created fake vendors. Shell entities tied to vacant lots and post office boxes. Funds were routed through multiple accounts, layered just enough to look legitimate. And eventually, they landed exactly where we expected, paying off Dana's debts. Piece by piece. Bill by bill, like I had signed up to fund her life without ever knowing it. Theo compiled everything into a file so precise it felt clinical, chronological, cross-referenced, indisputable. When he finished, he locked it in a case and looked at me. "Wait," he said. "For what?" I asked. "For them to think they're still in control." And here's where it gets interesting, because 3 days later they called me. My mother's voice was calm, professional even. "We need to discuss a business matter." Business matter. As if that's all this had been, we agreed to meet at a restaurant near the hospital district. I arrived first. And when they walked in together, perfectly composed, carefully dressed, I realized something unsettling. They thought they were ahead of me. They sat down, ordered coffee, didn't touch it. My father spoke first. He had a proposal, an opportunity. A private healthcare investment fund. A chance, he said, for all of us to build something meaningful together. Then he slid a piece of paper across the table. A number was written on it. I recognized it instantly. It matched, almost exactly, the remaining balance on Dana's largest debt. I looked at it, then at him, and asked one question: "Where did last quarter's revenue go?" Silence. Then I started listing things. Vendor names, contracts, invoices, one by one. I watched his composure unravel in real time. Watched my mother stop meeting my eyes. They tried everything. Economic downturn, clerical errors, miscommunication. And when none of it worked, they turned on me. I was cold. I had always been cold. I was imagining things, acting in bad faith. I let them talk. Then I stood up and walked out. That night, Theo and I made a decision, not emotional, strategic. Our annual foundation dinner was 10 days away. A formal event, high profile, carefully curated. I called my mother, told her I'd been too harsh, too quick to judge, told her I wanted to make things right. And then I invited them, all 3 of them, as guests of honor. I even promised something extra. "A check," I said. "I'll have it ready that night." Her tone changed instantly, warm again, proud again. By the end of the call, she was praising me, saying she'd always known I was generous. I hung up and felt nothing, because what they didn't know was that the dinner wasn't a reconciliation. It was a stage. The night of the dinner arrived with the kind of quiet precision that usually signals something important is about to happen. Not loudly, not obviously, just inevitably. The ballroom at the hotel downtown was already alive when I stepped in. Conversations layered over soft music, glasses catching the light, familiar faces moving through the space with practiced ease. Our clinical partners, donors, senior staff, people who had helped build something real with me, something I had almost lost without realizing it. Theo stood near the back of the room, speaking with one of the board members. He didn't look at me right away, but I knew he was aware of everything, every entrance, every shift in tone. That was how he operated. Controlled, observant, precise. I took a breath, adjusted the sleeve of my dress, and stepped further inside. And then they arrived. My parents entered first, moving in sync like they always did. My father's hand rested lightly at my mother's back, guiding but also presenting, an old habit that made them look unified, composed, untouchable. Dana followed a few steps behind, already laughing at something someone near the entrance had said. Too loudly, too easily, like nothing in her life had ever truly cost her anything. They looked good, better than they should have. Clothes that suggested stability, confidence, success, things I now knew were built on borrowed ground. For a moment, I simply watched them. My father shaking hands, introducing himself with that same measured authority. My mother smiling, warm and effortless, slipping into conversations like she belonged in every one of them. Dana drifting toward the bar, already at ease. They didn't look worried. They looked victorious. And that told me everything I needed to know. I felt something then, but again, it wasn't anger. It was distance. Clean, complete, the kind that allows you to act without hesitation. Theo approached me quietly. "They're comfortable," he said under his breath. I nodded. "They think this is theirs." He studied my face for a moment. "You ready?" I glanced across the room once more, at the people who trusted me, at the space I had built, at the illusion my family was still living inside. "Yes," I said. "Let's finish it." If you've ever wondered what it feels like to take your life back in one single moment, this is it. When I stepped onto the stage, the room settled almost immediately. Not silent, but attentive, familiar, safe. I had stood there many times before, speaking about growth, about care, about what we were building together. But this time was different. This time, I wasn't there to celebrate. I was there to reveal. I let the quiet stretch just long enough. Then I smiled. "Thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady, measured. "This work we do, it's built on trust, on integrity, on the belief that what we're creating matters beyond numbers." A few nods, a few soft murmurs of agreement. I continued. "But sometimes, the most important lessons about what we build don't come from success." A pause. "They come from understanding exactly what can break it." The room shifted slightly. Not discomfort, just curiosity. I let that settle. Then I looked directly at them. "My family is here tonight," I said, my tone warm, almost proud, "and I'd like to invite them to join me on stage." Across the room, I saw the reaction ripple through them. My mother smiled immediately, gracious, composed. My father followed, already preparing his posture, his expression. Dana hesitated for half a second, then shrugged and made her way forward. They joined me under the lights. Close enough now that I could see the details, the confidence, the expectation. They thought this was recognition, a gesture of reconciliation. My mother reached for my hand briefly, squeezing it. "I knew you'd come around," she whispered. I didn't respond. Instead, I turned back to the audience. "I wanted to share something tonight," I said. "That changed how I understand responsibility and trust." I nodded once, subtly. Theo moved at the exact same moment. Behind us, the display screen flickered to life. At first, it was just numbers. Tables, columns, records, nothing dramatic, nothing emotional, just data. Then the labels appeared. Vendor names, payment logs, authorization signatures, routes. Connections, carefully organized. Impossible to misinterpret. The room went quiet, not gradually. Instantly. There's a very specific kind of silence that happens when a group of people realizes they are witnessing something real, something unscripted, something irreversible. This was that silence. I didn't turn around. I didn't need to. I could feel the shift beside me. My mother's hand slipping away from mine, my father's stillness breaking. Dana stepping back slightly, her posture changing, not dramatically, but enough. I spoke again. "These records represent the past 18 months of financial activity within our clinics." My voice didn't shake. Specifically, funds that were redirected through unauthorized vendors. A ripple moved through the audience, subtle, controlled, but unmistakable. I continued, "Those vendors don't exist." Now I turned, slowly, deliberately, and looked directly at them. My father authorized every one of these transactions. His face had changed, not completely, but enough. The confidence was gone, replaced by something sharper, more urgent. "This is inappropriate," he said quickly, his voice low but tense. "Turn this off." No one moved. I held his gaze. "The funds," I went on, "were routed through multiple accounts and ultimately used to pay off personal debts." Dana's breath caught. Barely audible, but I heard it. Everyone near us did. My mother lifted her hand to her mouth, not theatrically this time, instinctively. "This is a misunderstanding," she said, her voice tighter than I'd ever heard it. "Miriam, stop this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. "The documentation has been reviewed," I said calmly. "Extensively." Another slide appeared, clearer, simpler, lines connecting accounts. Amounts, dates, everything laid out. No room for interpretation. My father stepped forward, his composure cracking fully now. "You don't know what you're doing," he snapped. This is defamation." The word hung in the air, heavy, wrong. I tilted my head slightly. "No," I said. "It's not." And that was the moment it ended. Not with shouting, not with chaos, but with recognition. They knew, I knew, and everyone in that room understood exactly what had happened. Dana moved first. She didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't say a word. She just turned and walked off the stage. Her face wasn't angry. It wasn't even ashamed. It was calculating, like she was already thinking about what came next. My parents followed seconds later. My father still speaking, angrier now, louder, but the words didn't matter anymore. My mother didn't look at me, not once. They exited through the side of the room, and the silence they left behind lingered. For a few seconds, no one spoke. Then, slowly, conversation returned, soft at first, then steadier, controlled, people processing what they had just seen. I stood there for a moment longer, then I stepped away from the podium. Theo met me at the side of the stage. "It's done," he said quietly. I nodded. And for the first time that night, I felt something. Not relief, not satisfaction, just space. They came to the house the next morning. Before 7 a.m., I watched them on the security monitor. My father at the door, knocking sharply. My mother just behind him, tense, waiting. The knocking turned to pounding, then to something else. Urgency, anger, something close to desperation. I didn't open the door. Theo was already handling it. Within the hour, they were served. Formal notice, cease and desist. The beginning of something they couldn't talk their way out of. The calls started after that. Dana, mostly, different numbers, different tones, sometimes angry, sometimes pleading. Sometimes casual, as if none of this had really happened. I didn't answer any of them. There was nothing left to say. The legal process took 4 months. 4 long, precise, exhausting months. In the end, it resolved exactly as it should have. My parents were removed from any involvement in the clinics. The recoverable funds were recovered, and Dana's debts finally became her responsibility. Not mine, not ours, hers. The noise faded after that. Gradually, messages slowed. Rumors lost momentum. People moved on. That's what they always do, but something else stayed, something quieter, stronger, clarity. In the spring, I did something small. At least it seemed small. I put a deposit down on a studio apartment near the harbor. It isn't large. It isn't impressive. There's nothing about it that stands out. Except for one thing, it's mine, entirely. No history attached to it. No expectations embedded in the walls. No roles to perform, just space. I go there sometimes when I need to think, to sit in silence that doesn't belong to anyone else. And I've realized something in those quiet moments. Unremarkable things become extraordinary when they are fully yours. There's a question I find myself returning to now. Not often, but when I do, it stays with me. Have you ever built something, a life, a role, a version of yourself, and then stopped long enough to ask who it was actually for? Because sometimes, the answer isn't what you expect. The people who took from me weren't complicated villains. They didn't need to be. They had simply decided, long before I noticed, that my value came from what I could provide, not who I was. The fraud was just the final entry in a much longer ledger. And once you see that clearly, you can't unsee it. So I'll leave you with this. If you've ever felt like you were being asked to be someone's solution instead of being seen as a person, pay attention to the moment that realization becomes undeniable. Because that moment, it changes everything. And if this story stayed with you, you already know why.